Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a Ukrainian talk show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star. We have a guest today, Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan. Great to have you.
Glad to be here, Sasha.
And Ivan Kucherenko from Kiev, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hi, Jonathan. Nice to be here as well.
Great to have you. And let's start with a video that it's actually a documentary of Champagne, which starts today in U.S. theaters, right?
Yeah, let's watch it.
Sure.
Sometimes in pursuing a curiosity about something going on in the world, maybe part of it is because you're looking to believe in something. There are people that you meet who are the embodiment of that hope that you want to have.
The film we'd set out to make was not meant to encounter an existential threat to democracy, just a spirited story of a comedy superstar turned president.
Be careful.
We're currently in this situation where there's a major Russian buildup.
The situation was changing and feeling more urgent. Go.
They had 2 impacts in town.
Oh my God.
This modern country was suddenly at war.
Ukrainians have this historical willingness to be a democratic state. And because it is so hard to get, it becomes very precious.
This is about vengeance. Putin's angry that this country wants to divorce itself from Russia forever, and he wants it back.
We are just ordinary people who want to live in our country.
Welcome to my home.
What can we help you carry?
We need Americans to understand the price we have to pay to be free.
Because of our proximity to active combat, that's the priority.
Guys, no grass. These fields are mine.
When you step into a country of such incredible unity, you realize what we've all been missing. We're in agreement. We absolutely agree.
If Ukraine fails, it's not just a failure for democracy.
Everything that happens here is going to affect every other place in the world today. That's the reason that we're all so invested in this.
When stakes are so high, of course we will keep fighting, whatever it takes.
Zelensky is the face of this extraordinary courage that's come up in all the Ukrainians we saw and talked to, whether they were in uniform, out of uniform, school teachers, even children.
I want to protect my country, my mom, my family.
The Ukrainians will win this. The question is, at what cost? You were born for this moment.
I'm ready to win.
I think it's going to get a lot of viewers.
Oh, yeah. Well done.
I watched it yesterday because yesterday it was broadcasted on the air on Ukrainian TV channels, and it's really impressive documentary. So I recommend everyone to watch it in order to discover not only about how this war is going, but what were the reasons of this war, and what was before Zelensky was elected as president, how he became president, and all those political discussions about it, and all those theories like he will go on negotiations with Putin and give some Ukrainian territories under the pressure of Angela Merkel and French president, Sarkozy, but this didn't happen, and as a result, we've got a full-scale war. Unfortunately, no one believed that it may be available the 21st century in the European continent, but now we're in this war. So it's important for everyone to watch this movie and to understand how Ukrainian people are struggling in this war.
Yeah, it's very interesting situation. On one side, seeing all the damage which was done to Ukraine, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians dead or maimed. The question would be, wouldn't be a better off for Ukraine to agree in 2015 or so? Okay, the Donbass is out, Crimea is out, keep it. We want to build a new prosperous country. And who knows, maybe later this Donbass and Crimea will be begging Ukraine to accept them back. Obviously, this is a very hypothetical question, which means no real sense right now when so much happened. However, the situation is that now, what's the difference between that scenario and one which actually happened in reality? In that hypothetical scenario, Russia would enjoy spoils of its aggression without any punishment, being respected by the West, by the East, by the South, and whoever, and Ukraine would left whatever it was left with, trying to rebuild. And I'm not so sure even that Western countries would help Ukraine that much at that point, because they have many other priorities how to use their money. So what's happened instead? Instead, Russia became aggressor of proportions only comparable to Germans in Second World War. I don't know what else to compare it with. It's embarrassed itself in the eyes of all progressive humanity, all the West, and not only West, there are many, more than 50 countries that support Ukraine. It is obvious that regardless what will be the end result of the war, West will help Ukraine to get on its feet and provide help to rebuild the country and provide the means to defend itself if Russia will choose to attack Ukraine again. Now, can you imagine if there wouldn't be Budapest Memorandum deal and Ukraine would remain a nuclear power? Can you imagine that Russia would attack Ukraine? I don't need to listen to your answer because it's obvious. Russia would never, ever attack Ukraine if Ukraine would have nuclear deterrence.
If it had, in fact, had an operational and usable nuclear deterrent, that's the key. It just had not just the physical stuff, but the actual capability of using it, and that would be the crucial difference.
And it means to carry it as well.
Yeah, one of the things that if you're looking for a historical analogy to compare the current situation to, the Western powers, along with Ukraine, are doing now what the Western powers failed to do back in 1938 when confronted with Munich and the Munich Agreement, or even during the phony war period in 1939-1940, when the West could have, albeit at some cost, opposed Nazi Germany and crushed it before it could have gotten the sufficient capability to attack the West. They are doing now what we are doing by doing this now and opposing Russia and rolling back with a counteroffensive. We are stopping Russia in their tracks before they can gain the fruits of war and possibly set a pretext for further aggression against the West.
What West is doing now what they didn't do in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea and part of Donbass. Because in 2014, West did the same they did in 1939 when Germany annexed part of Czech territories. So
and they belatedly have learned their lesson, I would argue.
Unfortunately, not from the first step. And I just want to add that given those territories to Russia didn't mean that Russia will not invade to Ukraine, because this war showed us that Russia wants not just some part of territories of Ukraine, it wants the entire Ukraine as their part, in order to restore their imagination of mighty of Soviet Union. And from the other side, they don't want to have a prosperous and democratic Ukraine just near their borders, because otherwise Russian people will see how it's good to live in prosperous and democratic country and not to in authoritarian Russia. And this is another reason why they wanted to destroy the Ukraine and Ukrainian sovereignty, just to put some kind of puppet government here and to make Ukraine a part of Russia, as they've made occupied territories of Ukraine part of Russia. One of the most important reasons why Russia wanted not only some part of territories of Ukraine, but the entire Ukraine, is that the Russian military production is not complete without the Ukrainian enterprises, because during the Soviet Union, a lot of military productions, military industry was concentrated in Ukraine. In Zaporizhia, Ukrainians produced engines for the aircraft, for the helicopters. In Kharkiv, Ukrainian produced tanks and equipment for tanks. In Dnipro, former Dnipropetrovsk, Ukrainian produced rockets, missiles, rocket engines. And without those production, without those industries, the Russian, they just didn't have the full cycle production of weapons, especially of modern weapons. When Russia annexed the Donetsk in 2014, first of all, they've removed the military factories in Donetsk, which produced the Kolchuga anti-air defense systems, and they've just removed the entire factories, all the technologies. They've stolen them, and based on those technologies, they produced some of their modern anti-air defense systems. In Lugansk, the same. When they annexed Lugansk, they've just steal a lot of equipment and technologies from there, because there were military factories from the Soviet Union. So this is the another reason of why they wanted the entire Ukraine. And another reason is also resources, because Ukraine is rich in resources. Ukraine is rich in agricultural land. Ukraine is rich in natural gas. We have huge amount of lithium, which is required in producing the batteries of in any modern device. Rich deposits of titanium and other. And Russia knows that, and they require these resources as well. And for what they require the military technologies and military factories, for what they require the deposits of strategic resources, we just may suggest. And another resource which Ukraine is rich for is unfortunately people. And we see in this war how Russia is behaving with the people like a resource, how they mobilize people on occupied territories and just throw them in the meat grinder on the battlefield, and they don't consider any losses because for Russia, people are another kind of resource. And if Russia captured Ukraine without any fight and annexed it totally and became part of their territory, it will be not only the fail of democracy, it will be a huge addition for Russian military potential and for the resource potential towards the further war with Europe and with NATO. Luckily, this didn't happen for now, and hopefully it will not happen if Ukraine will win this war together with the support of the Western countries, and not only the Western.
I was listening to one program. It was a Russian commentator based in the United States, Mr. Illarionov, who was suggesting that one of the reasons why Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal to Russia was the cost of maintaining that. And that cost was estimated as $5 billion a year. Never mind, this number is exaggerated for sure, but even if it's so, how much Ukraine spends today to fight this war, including all the Western help from the United States and other countries and elsewhere? Can you compare these figures at all? Even this $5 billion, United States could provide maybe half of it to help Ukraine to maintain its. You know what? I think United States were almost blindsided by not only collapse of Soviet Union at the end of 1991, but state of Russian economy in 1992. It was actually dying, and it's better to be dead.
Yeah, I had the experience in 1992 of visiting Moscow, and when I was as in a intelligence analyst program, and I visited there, and I linked up with some some British and Americans who are watching Russian open sources, and we went out to a restaurant, and the exchange rate at that time was 90 rubles to the dollar. Now that was when the collapse was only just beginning, but it was well underway. And we paid for our meal at a nice Russian restaurant on the outskirts of Moscow. And the bill came, and I saw the bill in rubles, and I did the mental arithmetic with the exchange rate. Now, how much do you figure in American dollars? How much do you figure for 5 people, a full course Russian meal at a good Russian restaurant, assuming you could get it in the West? How much would that cost, do you think, in American dollars? Just take a swap.
$600, maybe more.
Good guess. About $600. I did the mental arithmetic back then and looked at that and computed the cost in dollars. $18 for 5 people. Full course Russian meal with all the goodies, and $18. And that was when the exchange rate was 90 rubles to the dollar. If you recall, by about the mid to late 1990s, around 1998, when the Russians they devalued their currency and slashed several zeros off the ruble, off the exchange rate. The exchange rate at that point, just before they did that, was about 5,000 rubles to the dollar. And which meant that same 5-course meal, whatever, would have cost pennies in American dollars.
With this exchange rate, Jonathan, you could close the restaurant to all yourself and your friends and have all tables served and pay them.
That's where the saying came up as, if you want to feel like a rich man, go to Moscow. If you want to feel like a poor man, go to Tokyo.
in 1992, because when I was last in Moscow in 2014, the same dinner costed like $1,000, and this is just enormous progress. But I hope then when Russia will collapse for the second time, the civilized world will not do the same mistake and help them just stay from their knees, because Putin is not alone in this war, and I hope that in the international court will be as well, not only he and his government, and but also his other partners in crime like Angela Merkel, Nicolas Sarkozy, and other European leaders who actually helped Russia to prepare for this war. They were trading with Russia. They paid enormous money for Russian natural resources. The entire world was watching how Russia is militarizing. The entire world was watching how Russian propaganda is zombifying their population, how they attacked Georgia in 2008, how they attacked Ukraine in 2014, and they did nothing. They thought that it's okay to continue business with Russia, to help them militarize even more, and they will just not go further. And Russia, who understands only the language of power, they considered it as a global weakness of the European leaders. Or probably they've considered that they've bribed everyone, and that everyone will do as Russia wants. That were their expectation from invading to Ukraine. They've just ensured that they bribed enough Ukrainian politicians to just to allow them go to the Kiev and arrange some kind of military parade there, and that Ukrainian people will not fight against their invasion, and they will be just happy to become a part of Russia.
Ivan, you're just bearing out and proving what Winston Churchill once said about the Russians. There is nothing that the Russians respect more than strength, and nothing they despise more than weakness, particularly military weakness.
And actually, I would add not just strength and power, but the real strength and power, not perceived strength and power, not potential strength and power, but the real one, openly demonstrated. Here it is, right in your face. That's what they do respect in the last 1,000 years. There are countless. Now, Ivan, to your comments about Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy, unfortunately, that clearly demonstrate the weaknesses of Western electoral systems. If they're doing something that creates more jobs for Germans or Frenchmen, and create money by buying cheap Russian gas and oil and so on, so they're benefiting their electorate, so which will make it easier for them to be re-elected. It's so simple. There is nothing more than that.
Hitler did the same things actually for German people. He
But
created
do you think
a lot of new jobs in concentrated camps, for instance, where they buried Jews in the fire. So it's also here, considering from that point of view, Hitler was a great leader for Germany, because he just put the Germany back from their knees after the defeat in the First World War. He built roads, for instance, in Germany. And the problem is that a lot of people in Germany, especially the older ones, and what really strange, the youth, they really appreciate what Hitler did for Germany, and this is strange. And of course, now in Russia, the same situation. Majority of Russian are supporting Putin, and they support this war, even if we will not see on the results of some sociologic research, but just go to the streets and ask people what they do, or analyze their posts in social media, for instance, what they're writing about this war. They're just happy when Russian kills Ukrainian, when Russian bombs Ukrainian people, and from that point of view, Putin is a great leader for Russia, because he creates some new jobs for them. They can go to the army, where they're paying much more money than regular Russian citizen of some very far village in Siberia can earn per month more than he's earning for the year or several years, and they will do a nice job for Russia, killing Ukrainians on the battlefield, raping Ukrainian women and children, stealing washing machines and toilets from the Ukrainian houses.
And toasters.
Toasters. He's just a great leader for Russia.
I mean, when you look at it, yeah.
And but is it normal? Is it normal for the civilized world to judge by whether the leader is great for the country when he is doing something what he considers good for himself and for the population?
Very quick comment. Thank God Angela Merkel doesn't have Hitler's imagination.
Right.
Luckily.
And well, also, as many in the West have stated before about Nazi Germany, they recognize that Nazi Germany was brutal and perverted and had to be destroyed at a terrible cost. And the realization is slowly dawning and steadily dawning, I believe, in the West, that Russia, like Russia now, like Nazi Germany back then, has become a brutal and perverted state, and if necessary, must be if not destroyed, must be stopped cold, and not allowed to expand its aggression any further than Ukraine, and to repel it. And that is why, as we watch that, I've noticed that Western military experts and observers are slowly and steadily moving towards a greater understanding of the Ukrainian strategy and logic, and they are acknowledging that it is making progress, and that the Ukrainians have successfully adapted their means and goals to a proper strategy, and that it actually has a decent chance of succeeding. And if they do succeed, as I've stated before on this program, if the Ukrainians succeed in severing that link in between Russia and Crimea, severing that link and making the Russian occupation of Crimea logistically and militarily untenable.
Once the breach will be destroyed, that's it.
Yes, and that the basis for Russia's prosecution of the war against Ukraine will have collapsed. It will have suffered a major political blow. Ukraine will gain immeasurable more support from its Western allies and more commitment, and get those additional resources, because the Western allies will have concluded that, yes, it is in fact safer and in our best interests to pursue our support until Ukraine achieves a final political and military victory on the battlefield.
Jonathan, one question to you, very quick. Right now, with the visit of Zelensky to United States, Washington, New York, here's what Biden he articulated, that Ukraine must hurry up because it's unclear how political situation will change in the United States next year, how available continuation of the help to Ukraine based on the discussions and in Congress and so on. But then I don't understand if he wants really to help Ukraine and to win and relatively quickly, all he should have done is to commit to supplying catacombs rockets. So, and while he's asked by both Congress and Senate to proceed, and yet he's not doing that. In the meantime, he's afraid that there will not much help and all that stuff.
I will admit that makes him look very inconsistent,
at least.
and it may reflect, just to be charitable about it, it may reflect the uncertainty and the indecision within his own circles about, okay, should we push faster, or realistically, you err on the side of caution. You give the Ukrainians what they want and need, and let the Ukrainians decide on the schedule for attaining military victory, because they are the ones who, after all, have to do the fighting and the dying. So therefore, they are the ones who should be most in control of their own destiny, and you give them as much as you can realistically give them in order for them to be able to carry out their strategy successfully and force the Russians into a situation which they don't like, but which they may well be forced to accept.
I think it's very little articulated in the West and in the United States, unfortunately, too. The rise of the military threats of Russia during the Putin years in power. First, it's how you like to say, it's economy stupid, right? So when the price went up $100 plus per barrel around 2004-5, so the Putin started all of a sudden to feel much more power. There is much more money flowing in the coffers because
that's because Russia's economy, as you know, is very, very dependent upon the export of oil,
based on the natural resources, including oil. And then we're coming to 2007 Munich speech of Putin. I'm surprised it was taken so lightly. It was already very, very articulation of hatred to the West and the readiness to challenge the West, if not now, then in the near future. And then it all escalates to 2008 war against Georgia, accession of Abkhazia and North Ossetia, South Ossetia, and so on and on, going to 2014, going to 2022. So it's a very slow but escalation, which only blind people will miss it and will not be able to see it. No, in the middle, you see, all the military doctrine of the West, in my opinion, was based that you no longer need traditional weapons to conduct the war, like artillery, tanks, or whatever. You have nuclear weapons. You don't need anything else. It proved to be wrong. It proved to be wrong because apparently what's happened is that although the nuclear weapons is a great deterrent, but it's kind of a deterrent of the last resource. It's a very, very last day before your capital will be completely destroyed. Then you use it, not before. You cannot start the war with nuclear weapons right away.
Nuclear in the theoretical sense, nuclear weapons are only meaningful if you are trying to attain, if your state is trying to attain a Carthaginian peace. In other words, the complete destruction of the opponent as a political entity. You know, like Rome versus Carthage. Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed.
Yeah.
Unless you are going for that kind of political objective, and few states, there are some who do, but few states are willing to pursue that absolute a political objective. And is Russia willing to go to that extreme? Well, they claim, they say they have numerically the largest nuclear arsenal in the world. Well, that's really meaningless when you talk about nuclear weapons, especially even though the nuclear arsenals overall are smaller than they were during the Cold War. Still, the Russian nuclear arsenal in its totality is not larger than the combined nuclear arsenals of the United States and its NATO allies. If you total all those up, then we have the overall advantage in terms of sheer numbers. And
okay,
yes,
and you're talking about a scenario when Russian nuclear arsenal is properly maintained.
Right. We're assuming that their nuclear logistics and maintenance system is more competent somehow, or is as competent as the U.S. system, and for that matter, or for even even various Western systems, that somehow the rest of their logistics has apparently been shown to be very incompetent, very corrupt, and very inept, but yet somehow magically their nuclear arsenal is going to be just absolutely superbly kept and maintained because that's their top priority. Maybe, but we're
exactly.
don't bet your
I just wanted to say that Ukraine can move faster, but in order for Ukraine to move faster, we must receive not 10 Abrams tanks like United States is sending us. We must receive thousands of Abrams tanks, and we must use long-range missiles, which are not.
They must receive
yes.
enough weapons to create.
And of course, we must have aircrafts because, for instance, the victory of the United States in Iraq War was impossible without the using of the aircrafts and bombing and destroying completely the whole military infrastructure of Saddam Hussein before the land operation began. And if United States is not giving us aircrafts, maybe then United States can join this war, like some local volunteers were like Putin was saying that there were no Russian troops in Crimea and in eastern part of Ukraine. They were just some kind of local people who found some tanks and artillery deep in their mines and just struggling for something like that. So probably a couple of unidentified aircraft carriers can go to the Black Sea and join this war as Ukrainian volunteers, and probably then Ukraine will move further. But while Ukraine is moving like in the pace where available to move, and we have to understand that during this pretty slow pace, Russia is destroying Ukrainian cities and villages completely without any use of nuclear weapons, but with the same effect. If you see on the recent liberated Ukrainian cities and villages, you will see the same picture as seen in Hiroshima, for instance. They are completely destroyed. It's a burned land. And I've got just another video, which I didn't plan to show for today, but let's watch it. It's a video from recently liberated Klishivka in Donetsk region near Bakhmut. And let's see what Russia turns Ukrainian cities and villages into without any nuclear weapons.
very impressive.
Very
It's
stark and
well,
very convincing.
very convincing. Yeah. We hope that Ukrainian counterattack will continue to develop as it was in the last few weeks, and we will have much better and more inspiring news on Friday, same place, same time. In the meantime, thank you so much. We'll see you on Friday. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.